Hello, this is the sermon for the fifth Sunday of Easter, and the text is Revelation chapter 21, verses 1 to 6. Today's passage from the book of Revelation is part of the climax of the work, in which God's purposes for creation are fulfilled in the making of a new heaven and a new earth, and in the coming of the holy city, the new Jerusalem, down out of heaven from God, in which God dwells intimately with God's people and brings them surpassing consolation. This passage may be familiar to us from funerals, where it is undoubtedly meant to console the grieving. God will wipe away every tear from their eyes, it says, followed by the promise that death will be no more, mourning and crying and pain will be no more, for the first things have passed away. Comforting words, to be sure, provided that you accept John's vision as true. As we saw a couple of weeks ago, the book of Revelation is not a coded prediction of the end times, but more of a political manifesto, a summons to resistance. Throughout the book of Revelation, its author, John the Seer, uses symbolic language to encourage the book's first hearers to be faithful witnesses, to testify that God, the Alpha and the Omega, and not Caesar, is Lord. That means that the New Jerusalem and the new heaven and new earth to which it belongs are as much symbols of a spiritual reality underlying the facade of ordinary reality in the present, the here and now, as they are promises of a future paradisal existence for the people of God. That the New Jerusalem is more than just a future promise is suggested by its anticipation, which we heard in last week's passage from the book of Revelation. In that passage, we were introduced to the victorious martyrs, about whom it is said, in words like those from today's passage, that they are before the throne of God, and worship him day and night within his temple, and the one who is seated on the throne will shelter them. They will hunger no more, and thirst no more. The sun will not strike them, nor any scorching heat, for the Lamb at the center of the throne will be their shepherd, and he will guide them to springs of the water of life, and God will wipe away every tear from their eyes. Last week's passage from the book of Revelation anticipates several features of the New Jerusalem from this week's passage. The tender intimacy that characterizes the relationship of God with God's people, the presence of the paradisical water of life, and the absence of suffering. So the question that we face is, in what way these visions, the anticipatory vision of the great multitude and the climactic vision of the New Jerusalem, correspond to present reality? Now, at first glance, there does not seem to be any apparent correspondence between the reality revealed in these visions and the reality of the everyday world. We do not consistently experience the presence of God, and suffering in all its forms continues to plague humankind. This has led to the book of Revelation being at once rejected as, and praised for being, escapist fantasy. Nevertheless, although in the climactic vision from today's passage from the book of Revelation, John the Seer sees a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, John intends for this vision to inform our experience of this world. Indeed, John presents something of a paradox. It is precisely those who have suffered for their faith who shall dwell in a realm characterized by the absence of suffering. To me, what these visions suggest is that it is those who live in a manner characterized by Christ-like habits, dispositions, and thoughts, whose lives thereby testify to the lordship of Christ, who will be most able to endure suffering. Indeed, that this appears to be so has been demonstrated by the willingness of Christians to face suffering for their faith, from the martyrs of the Roman period down to the black Christians of America during the Civil Rights Movement, or of South Africa during apartheid. One of the purposes of the vision of the New Jerusalem, then, is not to act as a piece of escapist fantasy, promising that God will rapture a select few out of this world into heaven, but to strengthen the capacity of Christians to endure suffering in this world, especially for their faith. The vision of the New Jerusalem, then, is more than just something consolatory to be read at funerals, but part and parcel of John's ultimate purpose of strengthening the capacity of his hearers both to endure suffering and to be faithful witnesses to the lordship of Christ. In a way, we do not have to wait for the end times to experience something of the presence of God promised in the vision of the New Jerusalem. We can have anticipatory experiences of God's presence with us through worship and prayer. Even here and now, we can experience, to some degree, something of what it is like for God to wipe away the tears from our eyes and to drink from the spring of the water of life. And it is extraordinary that it doesn't take much. To experience God's presence, even just once, can sustain us for a lifetime, as in the example of Charles Wesley, who led the Methodist revival in England after his heart was strangely warmed when he heard the scriptures proclaimed at a prayer meeting, or of Martin Luther King Jr., who, by an experience of the assurance of God's presence in prayer, was able to face with courage the suffering concomitant with his role as a leader of the civil rights movement. So may you be blessed to experience God dwelling with you, to drink from the spring of the water of life, and to feel God wipe away every tear from your eyes. May you dwell in the New Jerusalem.